Frida surprises everyone today by revealing a new side of Agneta, shedding light on her hidden battles, controversies, and personal hardships from years past. Frida and Agneta's relationship was far from harmonious, in contrast to the smooth harmonies of ABBA. Agneta, the quiet blonde with an obsession with perfection, and Frida, the passionate brunette with a raging temper, frequently found themselves at odds. They were completely incompatible in every way. Behind the scenes, tensions rose as Frida's energetic stage presence clashed with Agneta's more reserved and controlled manner. Their disagreements extended beyond aesthetics. During tours, Frida allegedly became irritated with Agneta's coldness and her determination to isolate herself. A rift developed within the band because Agneta frequently kept her distance, despite Frida's need for companionship. Arguments over ideas weren't the only thing at play here. It was an internal struggle stemming from jealousy, bitterness, and whispered complaints. Agneta is portrayed as challenging by Frida's recent revelations, manipulative, to the point where she discreetly undermines others around her while exploiting her weaknesses to garner sympathy. Even after ABBA left, Agneta still had problems. A whirlwind of broken relationships, dysfunctional families, and unstable emotions characterized her private life. In the wake of her public divorce from Bjorn Ulvaeus, Agneta fell into a pit of despair and isolation. After her family's togetherness crumbled, she battled emotions of isolation and inadequacy. As she tried to manage her celebrity status alongside her role as a mother, her connection with her children deteriorated. Each relationship in her love life was tragic and chaotic. Thomas Sonnenfeld was involved in one scandalous relationship. His brief romance with Agneta ended tragically, leaving her emotionally devastated. Her involvement with Gert van der Graaf, a stalker from the Netherlands, was the most odd part, though. Their disturbing interplay became a real-life thriller as Agneta remained trapped in his obsession despite judicial interventions. Across Europe, people were scratching their heads over this strange romance that revealed Agneta's frailty and dubious judgment. It wasn't only Frida with whom Netha was at odds. Other people in the music industry were also involved in her tense interactions. Her bosses and producers frequently complained that she was too controlling and unwilling to compromise, making her a pain to work with. Refusing to give in to commercial demands, she had conflicts with record executives over who had authority over her creative decisions. While this obstinacy helped her stay true to her artistic vision, it drove a wedge between her and her co-workers and gave her a reputation for being unpredictable. When Agneta insisted on numerous takes, fixating on insignificant minutiae that irritated producers, tensions would rise in the recording studio. Collaborators walked on eggshells, scared to provoke her explosive anger, because she refused to take constructive criticism. They said she had an innate talent for holding grudges and could escalate even the smallest of disputes into a full-blown fight. Even when she was working alone, Agneta had trouble keeping up good ties with her colleagues. Even while her individual endeavors were successful, they were tainted by conflict that occurred behind the scenes. Her colleagues said that she was erratic and unpredictable, and that her paranoia frequently morphed into perfectionism. Years of celebrity had strengthened her emotional barriers, and she had a natural talent for excluding people. Word on the street was that she had a penchant for having dramatic meltdowns in the studio, which led to slamming doors and the abrupt cancellation of projects. Those around her were left perplexed and fatigued as she went from being excited one minute to withdrawing and distant the next. Her mistrust reached far beyond the artistic community. Her reluctance to participate in promotional efforts and her contempt for the media made her difficult for business managers and publicists to work with. Agneta felt that interviews were intrusive and that people often took her reserved answers as a sign of arrogance. Because of this, the gap between her and the industry widened, and people began to view her as an introvert who was challenging to collaborate with. Her solitary career may have seemed glamorous at first, but it was actually a battleground of failed partnerships, missed chances, and shattered professional relationships. The characteristics that made her unique as an artist also served to separate her from others, leading to broken relationships and unspoken grudges. Agneta was hurt by fame. Her mental health suffered as a result of the stresses of fame, constant touring, and intense media attention. Her anxiety, dread of flying, and sadness were so severe that they consumed her life. Because of her crippling phobia of flying, ABBA could only tour sometimes, provoking discord among the group and hatred from Frida, who thought Agnetta's fears sprang from an attempt at manipulation rather than actual terror. The solitary life of Agneta decision-making after ABA wasn't purely subjective. Her delicate mental condition necessitated it. She went into hiding, spending most of her time on her Swedish island home. Her later years were defined by a vicious cycle of loneliness and paranoia, which were exacerbated by her solitude. As she limped through her resonant home, plagued by recollections of her past and the terror of being forgotten, the days turned into nights. A prisoner of her own fears and remorse, the once vibrant celebrity eventually faded into oblivion. Obsessive thoughts and a crippling fear would send her mind tumbling into dark corners. I felt overwhelmed by every challenge, no matter how small. Ragnar struggled with sleeplessness. As a harsh reminder of a world she could no longer confront, the echoes of faraway applause haunted her sleepless nights. The weight of her seclusion caused her connections to crumble, and her phone accumulated dust as calls from old pals went unanswered. Somehow, the world outside turned become an adversary, inspiring continual dread and mistrust. Every news article and photo made her feel like someone was prying into her life and taking away her last vestiges of privacy. Even her nearest and dearest relatives were unable to penetrate the emotional barriers she had erected. The adulation and celebrity that once befell Agnetha had turned into a curse, and she now had to face the demons she had created. Notoriety was both a boon and a bane for Agnetha. It catapulted her to international celebrity, but also robbed her of her feeling of normalcy. Even though she had millions of adoring followers, she frequently felt stifled by the limelight that had been her lifelong ambition. The admiration of complete strangers stood in stark contrast to the void she experienced as the stage lights went off. Agneta struggled in the solitude of her home with the seeming contradiction of wanting and being afraid of human interaction. People that contacted her made her suspicious because she suspected there were hidden agendas behind every smile, even though she yearned for real relationships. Eventually, she settled into a pattern of dodging everything: people, calls, and, worst of all, herself. Frequently, she would gaze out her windows, observing how the world continued on without her, mired in a bygone era where ABBA's golden days seemed both far away and all too real. Instead of being quiet and serene, her time alone was resonant with regret and the unanswered questions of what might have been. Memories of unfinished business, friendships shattered, and love that slipped through her fingers like sand were whispered by the deserted rooms of her home. A face she didn't recognize appeared in the mirror, a continual symbol of the relentless march of time and the seclusion she had voluntarily chosen, but now profoundly regretted. As the days went by in relative quiet, the walls that had previously shielded her from the world outside began to feel more and more like a suffocating prison. A chilling reminder of how fleeting stardom is. The gap between her former life as a commanding figure of raucous audiences and her current life in relative obscurity was intolerable. In Agnetha's story, we see not just the price of celebrity, but also the crushing burden of living in its aftereffects. When the adulation dies down, but the echoes continue to torment even in the stillest of moments. Despite the enduring quality of ABBA's music, the band members' personal relationships clearly show signs of cracking. A legacy of musical genius and human anguish has been laid bare by Frida's forthright admissions about Agnetha's turbulent life. The life of Agnetha is a tale of contrasting extremes: dazzling triumph shrouded in emotional turmoil, a voice that captivated millions, and a heart wounded by remorse and struggle. Even while everyone was dancing to ABBA's catchy hits, there was actually a darker, dissonant tune playing in the background, and Frida is now brave enough to let everyone hear it. Infused with the sourness of treachery, this tune reflects the cracks that lie behind ABBA's dazzling exterior. Friendships broke down, loves went bad, and secret demons flourished behind the surface of the glamorous and famous world. Though cemented in music history, Agnetha's legacy bears the marks of scandals, broken relationships, and the lingering effects of decisions made and ones left unmade. Agnetha is seen as more than just a celebrity. She is also a lady ensnared in her own mythology, as contrasted with the joyful rhythms that characterized ABBA. Finally, her history makes us wonder if success is ever truly free of cost, and if the price Agneth paid was worthwhile in comparison to the transient glamour of fame.